Philippines in a very fast evolving landscape. I mean, we've just come off a weekend of intense trade negotiations between the US and Chinese delegations, and that's elicited a sort of positive response, setting up the stage for the Trump-Xi gathering that is expected to take place in Korea later in the week. So as I say, these changes in the environment coming in fast and furious, what does this mean for central banks? I mean, you just think to this month alone, where we've had numerous central bank surprises in terms of decisions out of the Asia-Pacific versus consensus economist estimates and what some market participants were actually expecting as well, including for Bangko Sentral. So let's discuss what all this is going to mean for financial resilience, for investor confidence as well. Dr. Diokno, maybe let's start with you first.
All right.
We just came off an interview on Bloomberg TV, and in it you highlighted how the Philippines can likely avoid a growth slowdown. For now, at least, that seems to be the case. But for the benefit of our audience here, talk to us about what you see as the drivers of Philippine growth in the year ahead.
Globally, the shift from economic integration to deglobalization now under Mr. Trump has a tectonic effect on the whole world, right? But each country would have a different effect. Like the Philippines is not as open as other countries like Singapore and Malaysia. So it's not going to be affected too much, but it's still going to be affected because of the sentiment of investors, right? It's difficult to invest in this kind of environment where you don't know what will be the tariff today or tomorrow or next week, right? So that would have a huge impact on capital investment.
What about in terms of the tariff impact? Because as we know in the Philippines, and this thing that we've raised in our previous conversations, that it's more about the second order effects of these levies. But what are you seeing in terms of the potential for the front-loading effect to ease? Are you seeing that impacting Philippine exports at the moment?
Yeah, because if you're a businessman, in terms of if you want to invest, you think of long-term, right? Not just tomorrow or a year from now. But under this kind of environment, it's going to make kind of difficult to make an investment decision. If you're a local plant, you want to expand, that will have an impact also. What will be the tariff? Of course, many of the countries here in this part of the world would have a 19% tariff. But you think of China, for example, or Australia. So, but you don't know. There is a shift every night practically, right? So. This uncertainty, I think, could have a global impact on investment. And in fact, that's really what's happening. Foreign direct investment in general has really gone down. Okay.
You raised China, and I'm glad you did, because one of the issues for economies in the ASEAN region might be because China can't export as much to the US, the presence of goods, that has to go somewhere. So, as some put it, the issue of China dumping goods in the region. Is that something as you see as a key risk?
Yeah, that's a reality. Maybe we will benefit from Chinese cars instead of going to the US, could go to the Philippines at a much cheaper cost, but you don't really know what's going to happen, right? So there's a lot of moving parts, so it's kind of very difficult to predict, especially for an investor. So even today, we don't know exactly what Mr. Trump's tariff policy is. I think everybody agrees with that. Right?
Yes, the situation could quickly change, as we well know. When it comes to the tariff impact, Governor, I think the last time you spoke to Bloomberg, you didn't seem as worried about how it would affect Cambodia. And this was, I think, a few months back. Has that view changed in any way?
Well, first of all, thank you, Bloomberg, for having me again. My view on the tariff on Cambodia, and remember, we start off very high at 49%, and it came down to 19%. In terms of if there's such thing as winner, we're probably the biggest winner, although I mean, it's not the usual tariff-free that we used to enjoy. The thing is, the kind of manufacturing products that we export to the US are very low value added product, mainly garment and shoes. Competitions-wise, it was tight, but as long as this tariff level remained comparable to our competitors, I think the factory will stay in Cambodia. What would be more concerning is the situation in the US itself in terms of their consumption level. If something is not doing well, because clothes and shoes you can buy once in a year and that's it, you stay with it. So if the situation, the economic situation is not well, people are spending less, you go less to, I don't know, Zara or H&M or whatever, and therefore that will impact us. At the moment, as it stands, as long as the US economy is doing well, consumptions continue to stay strong, I think we can manage this level of tariff.
That being said, when it comes to garment potential tariff exemptions, are you optimistic that you will see that for Cambodia?
In terms of?
So the Cambodia trade agreement with the US, there has been some optimism that there could be carve-outs from the range of products that Cambodia faces tariffs with the US from. Do you think that we could see that for garment exports to the US specifically? Because as we know, it makes up a huge portion of Cambodian exports. Is that something that could potentially be exempted from US tariffs?
Garment, I'm not sure I get your question. Still a bit sleepy. Garment are also subject to tariff.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Yesterday there was a signing, well, an agreement with President Trump and our Prime Minister here, and that is tariff-free for all American product going into Cambodia. At least we have this kind of agreement. Hopefully there won't be any tit for tat on, I'm going to increase to this.
So maybe not expecting an exemption for now. What about for when it comes to, I mean, you talk about the rivalry, I guess, between some of these other economies that rely on textiles, apparels, garment exports to the US for their economies. They also have 19-20% tariffs, including Vietnam or Bangladesh, right?
Bangladesh.
So what is the competitive advantage you see for Cambodia?
Well, I don't see, it's not like it came down to 19% and we'll be able to export more. At least we maintain the level that we have at the moment. For us, our strategy is not to continue to manufacture the same things. We need to grow up the value chain and create more value added. And that's exactly what we have been doing, trying to diversify, first of all, our export destinations, because we used to rely a lot on the US and the EU. At the moment, we'll look more inward, that is ASEAN, and our trade with ASEAN has grown quite considerably for the past 10 years. We have also looked towards other destinations such as Japan, China, and as part of RCEP, of course, we're going to take advantage of this. In terms of the manufacturing of garments, so destination, second is the type of product. So garment used to be about 75% of our export 10 years ago. Now it's stay at around 50%. And so we're going towards semiconductor, car assemblies, bicycles, and all sort of products. So this is our strategies. The other things I think we have also looked into is agriculture. Now agriculture might be something that we look at as low value added, but I think it could be very strategic because that everyone is, people keep growing, people keep eating, and regardless the crisis situation, you will continue to eat, and we want to make sure that we can strengthen our agriculture sector and be able to position ourselves as maybe the kitchen of the world, hopefully.
I have to ask you, Governor, because this is coming at the time of border conflict between Thailand and Cambodia. We saw over the weekend the signing of a joint declaration. Hopefully that moves things towards peace. But to what extent has the conflict perhaps detracted from some of these longer-term reforms that the Cambodian economy policymakers are trying to engage in?
We had this kind of conflicts before, but it's lasts shorter and to a lesser degree. This time it lasts longer, there's more casualty than it used to. And so there's no reason to shoot each other, right? Whatever it is, there's no reason for war. So it's very unfortunate. But with the ceasefire agreement signed yesterday, I hope we can keep talking and negotiate on whatever we disagree with and stop shooting on each other. The impact on both Thailand and Cambodia is as serious as each other. Cambodia used to have a lot of migrant workers in Thailand, about more than 1 million working there in various sectors. Now these workers have returned to Cambodia. So you imagine the impact on the Thailand manufacturing industry, but also imagine the impact on the Cambodian side to be able to absorb about 900,000 workers within a few months. It's impossible for us to allocate and find them jobs, and this is an issue on both sides. We are also losing the remittances that we used to receive from these migrant workers, and now we have to also help them to resettle in the country. We also import a lot from Thailand, agriculture and other household products. Now that we have this conflict, the import from Thailand stopped. So imagine the impact on the Thai manufacturing industry, plus not having workers. But for us, we have to find alternative elsewhere, which of course also are more expensive because it's new relationship, it's more, the distance is bigger, and so on and so forth. All this is not to the benefit of anyone, and I hope that with the peace agreement signed, we can start over our relationship with Thailand again.
The hopes for everyone really is that we get peace. On top of the economic impact, also, not to mention the humanitarian toll.
Of course.
You talk about remittances. Would you perhaps be able to put a number to the impact on the Cambodian economy? I think on the Thai side, there have been some estimates that the economic impact could be upwards of $3 billion. Are there some calculations that the Cambodian side might be making?
We haven't looked into it in detail, and because there's so many factors into play, but in terms of remittance, I think we're losing about $100 million a month, so about 1.2 billion. But remittance doesn't play a major part in our GDP as in the Philippines. Of course, it's going to be negatively affected, but the direct impact, so the direct impact from the remittance is still manageable, but the other indirect impact from the returning of the migrant workers, from on the families who've been relying on these
and absorbing these
is
workers.
A lot bigger.
In the case of the Philippines, overseas remittances account for, if I'm right, are approximately around 12% of GDP. It's huge. It's maybe around $35 billion annually. So it is one of our buffer protection, right? Our gross international reserves at the moment is around $109 billion. That's equivalent to around 7 months of imports. The received doctrine is if you have 3 months worth of imports, you're okay. So we have 7 months worth of imports. So that keeps the peso kind of stable. Now, before that, we leave that topic on tariff. I think it matters what you export to the U.S. I think in the case of Kuala Lumpur, your main export also to the U.S. is semiconductors, just like in the Philippines. Okay, I think I was talking to your IT guy last night. You export something like 70 to 80% semiconductors. In our case, we export something like 60%. But to me, between export of goods and export of services, and I think Trump has forgotten about export of services. I think in the case of the Philippines, our export of services is much more important than export of goods. Okay, so that's one point.
So buffer, as you say, and perhaps a pillar of the Philippine economy, is that going to be enough to help offset what might be the slowing of private investments because of the controversy, the government graft scandal in the country?
Definitely. I think there are two major sources of foreign exchange from the Philippines. One is the BPO, or rather the overseas Filipino remittances, and the second is the income from business process outsourcing. They would contribute approximately the same amount, around $35 billion every year. That was not there before, maybe 10 years ago. We don't have that. Now we have the luxury of having these two sources, plus foreign direct investment. But foreign direct investment as a percent of our buffer is much less than the other two. So we're okay.
You were also talking earlier about, in terms of what's happening because of the corruption scandal, and you see there being a path towards all this, in your words, mess being cleared up by the end of next year. I wonder what we need to see for us to get there, and are there conversations between Bangko Sentral and the Philippine lenders or lenders that are operating in the country to perhaps tighten restrictions on fund transfers that could have been facilitating corruption?
No, I would consider this corruption scandal as kind of a hiccup, right? It will be over in maybe 3 quarters, I would say. So we expect the economy to slow down to maybe a slightly less than 6% this year, and then recover to around 7% in 2027 and 2028. That's our growth path that before this scandal. I think the Philippine president really has to address this boldly and quickly, because as you know, in the case of the Philippines, the president serves for 1 term only, 6-year term. You got to do everything that you want to do within that 6 years. And he has already finished the first three years, so it's the second half of his term. If he wants to think of his legacy to future generation, he's got to fix this quickly and boldly. And I think the president is just doing that. Okay? And so I think that by 2026, I would see 2026 as a transition year. So maybe he's doing it now, 4th quarter of this year, plus the first half of next year. That's 6-9 months, and I think the second half will be okay on the path, the growth path that we have earlier projected.
Governor, speaking of issues that need fixing, in Cambodia also, what has raised some concern is the presence of scam centers. We are seeing, perhaps, does that affect negatively the impression that Cambodia gives to foreign investors, and what can be done to mitigate such sentiment?
So these scam centers news that you all been reading, it is a very concerning allegation and very damaging to the image of Cambodia. But I want to assure you that Cambodia doesn't summarize to scam center. We have a very good investment environment. We have clean source of energy. 60% of our energy supplies are from renewable sources. We have also improved our logistics with the launch of the new airport, which is fully owned by Cambodian, financed by Cambodian, contrary to a lot of the headlines saying that it is Chinese built. It is designed by a British company, consulted by the Singaporean companies and many other international companies, constructed by a Chinese constructions with about 90% of Cambodian workers. So I want to set that clear on this. Now come back to the scam issues. It is very, of course, damaging. And I have to say, we're kind of relieved that it's brought out, because you can see how intricate it's connected to the whole entire world. They are the company structures are so opaque that only the work of CIA can discover. And then you see links to these companies in many countries in the regions. Scam centers are everywhere. Unfortunately, Cambodia sounds very exotic, so the news likely can't to that up all the time. But I can assure you, and you have to be honest with ourselves, that it is everywhere. What matters is that where I sit at the central bank as the regulators is we want to be a transparent and credible member of the international financial industry. We want to make sure that our financial sector is transparent, that our economy continue to be attractive, because this is what we live for. We need investment, we need trust, we need confidence. And these stories, I hope, will then get everyone together to work. We're in the ASEAN summit with all the countries in. I hope that we can continue to work together, because to be honest, the victims, the center are probably in Cambodia and other countries here in the region. The victims are in the US, in the UK. The companies are in the US. Also in the US, you have the crypto assets seized in the US, you have properties in the UK, you have companies linked in Hong Kong, in Singapore, and everywhere else. And so you see how complex it is. But at the end of the day, I think what we need to be doing individually, beside, of course, fighting the scam center, is I've talked about it yesterday, is the digital literacy of our people.
Right.
Because
so,
the people who fall prey to this scam are a young, ambitious student from South Korea who just want a job, and he accepts an offer without checking anything. The victims are an elderly person in the UK who is desperate for lifelong love and fall prey to these scammers. And there's so many. Now, the session earlier talked about AI, and I was talking with my son about AI, and he said, I was trying to scare him with something on what I saw on social media, and I said, Mom, this is AI, and I said, how do you know? He said, before it was harder to spot. You have to find what is AI and what is real. Now, the problem is to try to spot what is real, because everything else is AI.
Governor, I guess to your point, it's also important about digital literacy. And some of these cases that you've raised are truly heartbreaking. But I wonder, how does that complicate decision-making or policy-making at the Cambodian Central Bank? What sort of specific safeguards might you be putting in place?
We have put in place, we have tightened our AML-CFT's measures. We've been calling banks and discuss about these issues and potentially try to have early detections on frauds and unusual activities, put it simply. These are the measures that we put in place, and we stand ready to cooperate with any other authorities who are investigating the issues and make sure that we go deep down to the root cause of it, and make sure that we can clear our name and also help the victim come to terms with all these issues.
Okay. Just also before I have to let both of you go, because we are sort of running out of time, wanted to get your thoughts as well on some of the market moves that we're seeing. It's very interesting how even amid a risk-on environment or uncertainty, either way, we see the price of precious metal, gold, rallying really hard. And some of the fundamentals behind this, as many market participants have highlighted, has got to do with central bank buying. I wonder, amid all this, has Bangko Sentral, have the Cambodian Central Bank been scooping up more gold?
You know, our gold reserves, as a part of our of the gross international reserves, is approximately now 13%. That's pretty high compared to the other central banks. And I think the price of gold is because of the uncertainty, global uncertainty. where do you put your money at this time, right? So that's where the demand is, gold. Rather, used to be US dollars, right? But now people are doubting whether the present situation is sustainable, so they'd rather invest in gold. But, so that's my take on this. It's the uncertainty that is keeping the price of gold high. Okay.
So is Bangko Sentral buying more gold or looking to buy even more
No,
gold?
it said look for more gold. We're actually, there was a time when we were passive participants in this kind of trade.
And even sold gold.
But we decided to sell gold. I said we should keep gold only as at 10% of our reserves. And so when it hit around 12, 13%. So when we bought gold at, what, $2,000, now it's close to 5,000.
Okay.
It makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
What about Cambodia?
Well, it's very interesting because Cambodia is a very dollarized economy, and we have been having these policies of trying to promote the use of local currency, and now I see the de-dollarization movement has become global. Every country now try to diversify their reserve into different currencies, not just gold. But of course, to the point of Secretary, is that in a time of uncertainty, you try to diversify your portfolio as much as possible. And gold seems to many of us as a safe alternative holding. But what's also interesting is that for me personally, I think gold is interesting because it's something that you can touch, you can feel, and it has an industrial values. But then Bitcoin's price has also been shooting up, and there's also some central banks holding Bitcoins, cryptocurrency, as reserve. This is actually a more interesting sort of development that when we don't have any cryptocurrency in our foreign exchange reserve. But it's also interesting to see, how people react to these kind of uncertainties.
Yeah. You talk about diversifying. I wonder also if you could talk to us about how open the likes of Cambodia are to diversifying the storage of gold beyond some of the places where traditionally it's being stored. Is that something that Cambodia is looking into?
We have been looking into this. Of course, we have diversified not just type of reserves that we have, but also the type of instruments that we hold. So beside Treasury, we have bonds, US Treasury bonds, we have other types of instrument. Beside US dollar, we have also other type of currencies, emerging economies, other developed economies. Beside the geographical
storage
of gold, we also need to diversify it. We have a few locations considered. So all these are
What are some of the locations that are being considered?
You have to London
do some
or
more
France.
research on this.
The gold has to be abroad, okay, in a safe depository or Swiss. Otherwise, you can't sell it. We have lots of gold in the Philippines. We can't sell that. It's got to be in London or in France, okay? It's just paper trading, actually.
There's been some talk about China being a potential place where central banks might store their gold. Is that something Cambodia might be considering?
We are exploring all possibilities.
And in the Philippines, is that
No,
something?
we're happy with London or France as our depository.
All right. On that note, thank you very much to both our panelists. Great to hear your insights. Thank you.